So here we are again. Welcome back. This is Revelation 11. I hope you've watched all the previous videos and you're about to start watching this. Although I know you haven't watched all the previous videos because I can see the numbers. But anyway, let's move on. We're going to start on Revelation 11, and this is all about two witnesses. It's about the temple. It's about two witnesses. It's about it's very interesting. I'll wait until we get into it. Okay, I'm just going to zoom that in a little bit. I hope that's working there. Okay, so the two witnesses. The two witnesses are, like I said before in one of the previous videos about the 144,000, is Jesus has taken the church, so there is no longer the church is no longer proclaiming the gospel to the world. When the church is taken, he sends in 144,000 Jewish evangelists. These are or converts from tribes of Israel, and they start speaking the gospel across the world again. Um, so they take the kind of the place of the church, and then they get killed off, and then we have two witnesses come along, and these two witnesses um, are probably Old Testament prophets that come back, are given life again, and they are standing there in Jerusalem, and they're calling down fire from heaven. They are, dropping people around them, and they're speaking the gospel. People hate them. So here we go. We're going to get into this. Then a measuring rod, like a staff, was given to me, saying, "Get up, and measure the temple of God and the altar, and count those worshipping in it." So he's given a measuring rod, and he's going up to measure the temple of God, which is interesting because at the time John wrote this is about 90 AD, the second temple had been already destroyed, and I think it was Titus had taken it back, everything in it, and even the rocks themselves. A lot of the rock from the temple went into the Colosseum, believe it or not. And apparently, that side of the Colosseum that was taken down was shipped over and built a lot of Peter's Basilica. So there is a good reason to suggest that the temple, the second temple in Jerusalem, now lives, in the edifice of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, which is interesting. Okay, so he's got a measuring rod and he's up on the Temple Mount and he's measuring the temple. So there is a third temple because the second temple is destroyed in 70 AD. This is 90 AD when it was written. So John is prophesying of a third temple on the Temple Mount. So watch out for that. If a third temple comes, you're in Revelation period. So do not, it says, measure the temple of God and the altar and count those worshipping in it. So count those worshipping in it. Obviously, there are Jews back in the temple again. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave it out, because it has been given to the nations, and they shall trample the holy city for 42 months. So 42 months is 3.5 years. This motif of 3.5 years is going to appear again and again and again now over the next couple of chapters. So keep an eye on that. 42 months, 3.5 years. 1,260 days down here is 3.5 years. So these are prophetic years. These are old, Hebrew lunar calendar, 30 months, 30 days to the month, 360 days to the year years. So, that's another, just a side note. So he's up there on the Temple Mount and he's measuring out for this third temple. And he says, "Do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave it out, because it has been given to the nations, and they shall trample the holy city for 42 months." If you know the layout of the temple, there was the outer court was around the temple. There was the inner court. There was the temple itself. There was the altars for the for the bread and the showbread, and there was in the temple itself there was the tables for the menorah, and there was the tables for the showbread, and there was tables for all the things, and then inside, behind, in the Holy of Holies is where the Ark of the Covenant was, and anyway, you can look that up yourself. But he's saying don't measure the outer court. So the outer court obviously is still given to the nations. So at this point in time, the Temple Mount belongs to the nations. It doesn't belong to the Jews. It's under the control of Jordan, actually. And the Muslims are the nations, and they control the Temple Mount. So obviously there's going to be some agreement that comes along where the Jews are able to rebuild their temple back on the site where it was, and they're not going to touch the outer court because they're not going to touch the mosque that's built there. The whatever they call it, or probably not the Dome of the Rock either. Will be left there. The Dome of the Rock is the golden dome that you see, and then there's the mosque of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is over there in the corner. That's all out in the outer court area of the old temple. So the Jews are going to be able to build their temple again, third temple. So let's get on here. Here it says the nations that have the outer court, they're going to trample the holy city for 42 months. So these nations that control the outer court right now, it's the Jordanians, so it's the Arab people that control the outer court. So they're going to trample Jerusalem for 42 months. Check that one, and if you see that happening, then you're in. You know where you are in the book. You're in. Oh, I'm in Revelation 11. Yeah, the Muslims are trampling the city. And it's 42 months now. I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses. See, here's where he introduces the 2 witnesses. And they will prophesy for 1,260 days, 3.5 years, dressed in sackcloth. So at the same time when the nations are trampling Jerusalem, these 2 witnesses won't be touched. They'll be there in the streets, and they will be prophesying for 1,260 days, 3.5 years, 42 months, same time. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 menorah that are standing before the Lord of the earth. So the 2 olive trees, an olive tree was always a symbol in the Old Testament. It was always a symbol for spiritual Israel. And the menorah, so the menorah is always a symbol of Israel as well, because the menorah is the Jewish lampstand, the 7 lamps on it, 7 lamps on it, and it's burning in the temple. The temple is not there right now, but anyway, so he's describing them. They are obviously Jews. There are 2 olive trees and 2 menorahs, so they are lights of the Old Testament. Speculation on this is they could be Elijah and Enoch, or they could be Moses. But interesting, what they do afterward is all things that Elisha and Enoch and Moses did, or Elijah, sorry, and Enoch and Moses did. Interesting thing, Paul says it is appointed for a man once to die. So at least you're going to die once. Moses died, so 2 Old Testament prophets that didn't die was Enoch and Elijah. So they may come back, and then they will die because the Antichrist is going to kill them. So let's move on here. If anyone wishes to harm them, fire will come from their mouths and consume their enemies. So as Jerusalem is being trampled upon by the nations, these 2 prophets are prophesying on the streets of Jerusalem, and if anyone tries to come near them, they'll just be burnt up by fire from their mouths. If anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way. These 2 have the power to shut up heavens so that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying. So it's not going to rain for 3.5 years in Jerusalem. And Elijah did that in past history, in the Old Testament. Elijah was said to have shut up the heavens for 3.5 years. And they will have power over the waters to turn them into blood. Moses did that. And God did it all through Moses. and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they wish. And Moses did that too. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that rises from the abyss will make war on them and overcome them and kill them, and their corpses will lie. Let's see if I can get up there. We'll move on. So they've been killed, and their corpses are going to lie on the open street of the great city that figuratively is called Sodom and Egypt. So even God himself is now calling Jerusalem. It's so destroyed that it's actually, he's calling it Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. So it's Jerusalem that they're talking about. Now, so these guys are going to be killed by the beast. The beast is the Antichrist. Okay, unless we didn't understand that. The beast that rises from the sea is the Antichrist. So this guy is we're going to talk a lot more about him in a while. But for the moment, we just got to know that he's going to be given power to kill these two witnesses. Okay, some from the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their corpses for 3.5 days. So again, it's kind of a mirroring of the 3.5 years. So for 3.5 days, they're just going to lie there on the street, and people are going to be, taking pictures of them, not allowing them to be placed into a grave. So they just obviously want them to rot on the streets for some reason. Those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them. So everybody who dwells on the earth will rejoice over them. Will rejoice over their dying and dead corpses on the street. Interesting. There's going to be a nice bunch left on the earth, eh? They will celebrate and send gifts to one another. So they'll send, pictures on their phone and their WhatsApp and their Facebook, and they will celebrate and send gifts through Amazon to one another, because these two prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. There's always across Revelation, there's like two peoples. There are those who dwell on the earth, and then there's those who dwell on heaven. And you'll see again that those who dwell on the earth are cursing those who dwell in heaven. So these people that dwell on the earth were tormented by these two prophets, and they're overjoyed. Amazon did a lot of business out of this. Interesting, before, never in history could people all over the earth see something that had happened and send gifts to one another. Here we are again. But after 3.5 days, the breath from the life of God entered them, and they stood up on their feet, and great fear fell on those who were watching them. So these people, these two prophets that were dead on the street, probably kicked around and, bloodied and whatnot, they came back to life again. They heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud, while their enemies watched them. So this is going to be seen again. Their enemies are sitting there watching them. And they were raptured up to heaven. For those who don't believe that there is such a thing as a rapture. At that hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city collapsed. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. So here we are again. All these events are culminating in people coming to salvation, coming to Yeshua. The Hebrew word for salvation is Yeshua. So they're coming to salvation because of all this horror that's happened. And the separation is happening again. Those who reject God will go their own way, and those who accept, the lordship of Jesus, they'll go the other way. They'll go to heaven. And you want to know how to get to heaven? Accept Jesus. That's it. Accept Jesus as your Lord. The second woe is past. The third woe is coming. Watch out. Okay, so we move on to the seventh trumpet. And we'll start on this page, and then I'll flip to the next page. Then the seventh angel trumpeted, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, let's move on. I wish I could do this quicker and easier. But anyway. So here we are. The loud voices in heaven saying, "The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord." Remember, I told you before about the opening the seals on the scroll. So Jesus was opening the 7 seals on the scroll, and that the scroll was the title deed because it was described as an ancient title deed had 7 seals on it, and it was written on the inside and the outside. So Jesus was taking back the title of the earth. And here we are. The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord. So this is how Jesus takes back the title of the earth. Now the earth is his, and of his anointed one, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders are seated on their thrones before God, and fell down on their faces and worshipped God, saying, "We thank you, Adonai, Elohai Sabaoth, who is and who was, and because you have taken your great power and begun to reign." So this is the point where, after the judgments, is the point where Jesus begins to reign on the earth, or God begins to reign. Up to then, I've written down there, up to then, Satan was reigning on the earth. So the judgments have now been done, and the trumpet judgments are done, and now Jesus reigns on the earth. The nations were enraged, but your wrath has come, and the time for the dead to be judged, to reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, the small and the great, and to destroy the destroyers of the earth. And henceforth, that's the whole point to it, eh? Then the temple of God in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant appeared in his temple. Jesus is the ark of his covenant. And there were flashes of lightning and rumblings and clashes of thunder and an earthquake and heavy hail. So this is the end of Revelation 11. This is where, the new owner of earth, Satan has been deposed, the time is coming, and a new owner of earth, the original owner, has taken back the title deed, and now he's going to stamp his authority on the earth. So that winds up Revelation 11, and the next video is Revelation 12. I'll see if I can get it done right now. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. It's so upbeat. Well, I think that's actually quite upbeat because God takes over the earth again, and Satan's condemned. So job done. Okay, so thanks for watching. See you on the next one.